The legendary Bolin Kazmer is here to talk about some of the most prolific scorers in NCAA and AIAW history, including Caitlin Clark, Lynette Woodard, and Pearl Moore. We're also going to talk about how Molly's own scoring prowess and her impact on the game as well. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
Bolin for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Hello and happy Wednesday. You are locked on to women's basketball. I'm Natalie Heavren, and I'm a features writer and the Atlantic 10 beat reporter for the Next. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. If this is your first time listening to Locked On Women's Basketball, welcome. We at The Next have over 100 reported pieces every single month. We have a beat reporter on every single WNBA team, one on more than 15 different NCAA beats, so get that YouTube subscription up. And you can also support us by subscribing to The Next for $9 a month, $72 a year at thenexttubes.com. Today, we'll be talking about Caitlin Clark and the rich history of girls and women's basketball in Iowa, two legendary scorers from the AIAW era of the game, Lynette Woodard and Pearl Moore, and Molly Bolin Kazmer's own scoring prowess. Joining me today is Vice President of Legends of the Ball, Inc., Molly Bolin Kazmer. So I had the president of Legends of the Ball, Inc. on back in December for the 45th anniversary of the Women's Professional Basketball League's first game. Before we dive in, Molly, can you just tell the listeners what Legends of the Ball, Inc. is and what you do?
Of course. How you doing, Natalie? Thanks for having me today. Legends of the Ball, Inc. was formed in 2018, right after the WBL, the first Women's Pro League, was inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame's trailblazers of the game. And we realized how little was known about the first league, the WBL, and our accomplishments and our contributions to the game. And so it was the idea of Liz Galloway McQuitter to form a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, Legends of the Ball, Inc. And we are actually promoting the historic and social relevance of the WBL. And we also encourage young players and hope to inspire young players. And we offer scholarships each year as well.
And I know I asked you about Caitlin Clark last year at the Final Four, but can you just talk about her for a little bit and what makes her so fun to watch?
Well, it definitely took someone like Caitlin to come through and really catch the attention, national attention of women's basketball fans. It's just that they weren't used to seeing somebody shoot from the logos, and it's been super exciting. And then once she started hitting out there and people were watching, then they realized she can also pass. You know, she's a great ball handler. She runs that team as the point guard, and they've had a lot of success there in Iowa because of her. So she's just one of those once in a generation players that have really shine the spotlight on women's basketball, and it's also, benefited not only the colleges but the interest in the WNBA has increased as well.
And Caitlin Clark now holds the NCAA Division I women's basketball scoring record. What makes her scoring and just overall game unique from your perspective?
It's just exciting to watch because really, especially to me as a scorer, the name of the game is putting the ball through the hoop, and that's what fans want to see. And Iowa has a long, rich history of girls high school basketball, and that sort of eventually led into the colleges being national competitors. And last year, as everybody knows, Iowa played for a national championship. But it's just, now they're selling out crowds, selling out huge stadiums of 15,000 or more. It was just something that was unheard of back in the early days of Title IX when we first started getting those scholarships.
And, as someone that played right after the passing of Title IX and grew up in Iowa. How does it make you feel to see not only Caitlin Clark, but the University of Iowa succeeding on such a large national stage?
It's just amazing, and it's super exciting. I was so lucky that I was in the stadium for the championships at the Final Four last year. Legends of the Ball Inc. goes each year, and we set up a display on our history, and we meet coaches and educate them and let them know, because it's really important to pass along this information, because these young players are inspired when they know a little bit more about their history. And up until now, that really hasn't happened that much. But it's just super exciting to see these sellout crowds. And then not only just for University of Iowa, but everywhere Caitlin's playing, they're selling out the stadiums. So they're also getting great ratings on TV. It's just been really fun and exciting to see, because you don't know what she's going to do next. Is she going to shoot from half court? She's going to drive to the hoop. She's going to do some magical pass inside. They're just really fun to watch them play.
And you grew up playing 6-on-6 in Iowa. For our listeners that maybe haven't heard you on the pod before or aren't familiar with the 6-on-6 game, can you just explain what it is?
The Iowa Girls High School started in 1927, and instead of just playing for physical education, they decided they wanted to keep the competition going between the schools. So they formed the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union, and Iowa consists of about 300 to 400 really small towns, and those were the teams that competed for the state championship each year. So there's a rich history in that, and every gym I played in high school was sold out. It was packed, and it was such an exciting time to be playing basketball in high school, especially in Iowa, because there was a lot of places around the country that they didn't even have girls teams in high school. There were quite a few players that I played against in the pro league that never even played on a high school team, or maybe just got 1 or 2 years. So I was so fortunate to be brought up to that rich history of that tradition of having the opportunity to play, and the support of the communities and the fan base, and all the media outlets. I mean, my gosh, when I was in high school, I went to a small school. My town was only 700 people, and we had live radio broadcasts. We had maybe 4 or 5 newspaper reporters there, and sometimes it'd be covered by the local TV station. So it was well covered by the media, and so the interest in it across the state was just amazing. It was something that you can't even describe. It was so far ahead of its time.
And how have you seen the state continue to embrace girls and women's basketball? I know you also played on the Iowa Cornets in the WBL, and obviously through Caitlin Clark right now playing at the University of Iowa.
Well, it's exciting for me because I went through that whole process of when they started switching over from 6-on-6. They claimed that the women didn't have an equal opportunity to get college scholarships by playing the half court game. And so they gradually started switching over to the full court game, the 5-on-5 game. And it was sort of done in phases. Like for a short period of time, the schools could choose which rules they wanted to compete in, the 6-on-6 or the 5-on-5. And then gradually it all ended up being the full court game. But when I first started playing with the Iowa Cornets, they were still playing 6-on-6 basketball in Iowa. So there was a little bit of resistance, or maybe a lot of resistance, to seeing the women play full court basketball, because they had been used to the half court game. So we were one of the first ones with the Iowa Cornets and the first pro league, the WBL, to introduce Iowa to full court basketball, even though they had the colleges starting to provide scholarship for women players. There weren't a lot of fans in the stand. As a matter of fact, the first year I played college, we beat University of Iowa by 50 points, and they didn't have the level of scholarships like we did. I went to a private college that had more financing for scholarships at that point than the University of Iowa did. It didn't take them long to catch up, but those first early years of major universities, it took them a while. So it's been super exciting, because I remember what it was like back at the beginning. And before you had these sellout crowds, there was nobody in the stands. So it's been quite a thing to witness.
And for our listeners, a head coach at Iowa, Lisa Bluter, and a couple of members of her staff grew up playing 6-on-6. So that rich history is still intertwined with the University of Iowa now.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up next, we'll talk about what made Lynette Woodard and Pro Moore unique scoring threats and about the importance of offense in the WBL. This next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. I'm going to tell you how I feel about the end of the regular season. I love conference tournaments and March Madness so much, but to see the seasons and careers end for so many student athletes does make me sad. I've also had so much fun watching and covering this season, I just don't want it to end. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. Today's episode is brought to you by Stitch Fix. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good? That's what I get with Stitch Fix. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new, on-trend favorites that will work for you. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want, how I want, no subscription required, and they send 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. I keep what works and send back the rest. Stitch Fix makes it all so easy. I just don't like to shop, and they save me that time and effort. Plus, I get outfits that make me look and feel really good. And if you don't love something, just send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/lockedon. stitchfix.com/lockedon. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Before we get into your prolific scoring, Molly, I want to talk about some players that you played against. Caitlin Clark is currently chasing Lynette Woodard's Division I scoring record, and you played against her while on the 1984 Olympic tour. Can you just talk about Woodard's scoring prowess and what it was like to play against her?
I think Lynette was probably one of the first generations of this just really all around, just really strong, talented, athletic players. That was just, she was very unique that way. And Cheryl Miller followed closely behind when she played at USC, and all those players that were on that 1984 Olympic team was sort of that first generation of these just, much bigger, stronger, taller, athletic players that were just really talented. It was starting a new generation of players. And Lynette was one of those. And I remember playing against her on that tour, and we had a situation where we collided on the court, and I definitely lost that battle because I ended up knocking my shoulder out of place again. But it was an amazing experience to go on that tour and play against the best that the United States had to put the Olympic team, and then see that team go on and win the gold medal.
And another prolific scorer you played against was someone that I had the honor to speak to, Pro Moore, who holds the all-time women's collegiate scoring record with 4,061 points. You played against her during the last 2 years of the WBL. What was her style of play like?
Pro Moore was one of those players that she moved well with the ball, and I think she grew up playing against guys just like a lot of us did at that period of time, because that's where you could really just get a lot more practice in, just going out on the streets and playing on the playgrounds and that sort of thing. But she was always a threat to the basket. And Pearl played for the New York Stars the second season, and we played the New York team for the WBL championship, and we lost in game 4. And they had just a really good all-around team. The coach, Dean Meminger, was really big on developing all his players equally. So even though she could score at will, she didn't have the green light quite like I did over at the Cornets, because they had a very balanced team with balanced scoring. And then Pearl ended up the next season playing for the St. Louis Streak. And again, she did a great job for St. Louis. She was always just a really tough competitor.
And, what do you want people today who never had the opportunity to watch Lynette and Pearl play know about what they contributed to pushing women's basketball forward?
I think it's important for everybody. I mean, not only just the public, but especially the young players to know, because they can be inspired by these women that came before that nobody knows anything about. And it's important to know your lineage. Where'd you come from? How did this happen? It didn't just happen. It took years and years of us chipping away at society's expectations to just give us a chance and support women's basketball. I remember, of course, it was a bit easier in Iowa because we had already been there popular as high school players in 6-on-6, but we still had to win over the crowds with our full court basketball. And I think it caught on probably quicker in Iowa than anywhere else, because they were always supporting women's basketball anyway there. But again, it's just a matter of knowing your history. I mean, the men do such a great job, especially at the pro ranks, of knowing who these great players were in the early days and what they did and what their stats were and what they could accomplish, because there's always someone that you can learn from and be inspired by. And that's the real reason that it's important to know that history.
And we'll talk about your scoring more in the next segment, but I just want to point out in some stats that you had sent over to our editor-in-chief, Howard, and I. But for the top 10 women's pro basketball single season records came from WBL players, 3 were ABL players, and another 3 were WNBA players. What was the offensive power like in the WBL, and what would you want people to know about that time that weren't able to watch it?
Well, I think what's really interesting and people find interesting is that we were the first league to play with the women's ball, the smaller ball. And for myself as a shooter, having that, it's only 1 inch smaller and just a few ounces lighter, but your confidence just went way up. I mean, I just felt like that basket was so much bigger, and it was an easy transition to adjust to that. But our shooting percentages were really good. I mean, we had games where the entire team would shoot 55% from the floor, field goal. So, and even higher, for free throws, 75 to 85% for the free throw line. So the girls could score back then. And we were fundamentally strong. I think that the fundamentals were so emphasized as we were learning the game. And I think that, and then the other thing I would just like to point out, even though we didn't utilize the 3-point line as much, when I grew up playing and how I was coached, is that you find the most high percentage shot in basketball, the location on the court, and that's where you go consistently. So you can get your out, so you can shoot a high percentage. We weren't really encouraged or allowed to shoot outside our range. If we couldn't hit more than 50%, say from beyond 20 feet, it had to be a special circumstance where we got to shoot out there. The players of today have so much more freedom. I kind of envy that, because I love those long distance shots. And I mean, that's what's so exciting about watching Caitlin, is just that she's unconscious and she has the freedom that if she wants to let one fly, and she has, really good court sense to know when the time to do it, when you pull back, maybe she drive the hoop. So that's what makes it even more special. But it's just, we played a different game. And I think that's not that unusual, because the game has developed and changed over the years. But we definitely did most of our shooting in the mid-range, high percentage area during the WBL.
Do you think if you played today, you'd be taking those logo threes?
I would love to. I used to practice out there, and I practiced at half court because it was just important to me to be able to shoot long distance and maintain my form on my shot. So I did practice long range shots. And the second year at the WBL, they did introduce the 3-point line, but it was 23-9. It was the same as the NBA players. And again, it wasn't even today, it's not a really high percentage shot, except when I was on, or when someone's just really hot and they're hitting the 3-pointers. But normally it's, usually in the mid 30 percentage. And so generally we weren't encouraged to shoot out there, but I think I was 2 for 4 for the entire season for the 3-point line. But it would have been fun if it had, if it had really counted as threes and I was allowed to shoot out there.
Coming up next, we'll get into more about Molly's scoring prowess and how much success she's had on the offensive end throughout her career. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. So, taking a step back, how did you get your start in basketball and how did you develop your game?
I think the way you really start is just by loving the game and being it was something I enjoyed doing so much. I wanted to play all the time. So the next step was just to learn the fundamentals from the best. So I started going to basketball camps in the summertime and finding ways to earn the money and getting the best coaching that I could at those camps. And there was competitions all the time. And then take what you learned at the camps, the fundamentals, and actually practice them and then utilize them when you got into a game situation. So I was very serious about learning the game properly and utilizing the fundamentals. And it really paid off because, especially in Iowa, because in high school, I would get 40 to 50 shots a game in a 32-minute game. So you get a lot of shots off, you better be able to shoot the ball. So, yeah. And I do want to mention, too, that Jan Jensen, who is assistant coach with Iowa, was one of the highest scorers in the state's history. I think she averaged like 62 points a game, which is incredible. So it really was a fun time to be a basketball player in Iowa.
Yes, I think she talked about that back in December. Howard had her on the podcast, and he, of course, had to ask her about the game where she scored 105 in a game. There are some, for our listeners, there are some old championship games from Iowa 6-on-6 state championships that I highly recommend you go watch. They're just fun to watch. I wish I was able to get to see that 6-on-6 game.
Well, we averaged in high school close to 100 points a game, and in 32 minutes, that's pretty incredible. And the top scorers would usually average at least 50. So my junior year, I averaged 50 points a game, and my senior year, I averaged almost 55 points a game. And it was always that bar kept getting higher. So when I got into the pros, to me, it wasn't that impossible of a task to score 50 points in a pro game because I'd already done it in high school. So it was, it's a mental thing, I guess. I don't know, where you believe that's not a difficult thing to accomplish, and you go after it.
Yeah, and you once scored 55 points in a pro game. And during your second season with the Iowa Cornets, You scored 1,179 points in just that season alone, averaged close to 33 points per game. What did you love about scoring? And, how did you how did you get the freedom from your coaching staff to shoot like that? And what was that season like for you?
It was incredible because I didn't expect that. We had a new coach that year, and he came in and he wanted more structure. He wanted us to have less turnovers, and he wanted more structure with the team. And that's exactly what I needed, because I had never really been coached to have that sort of discipline and structure on the court. And what that meant was that he had each person, one was the point guard and 5 was the center, but each person had their own designated places that they were supposed to run on the fast break. And we had plays that were set up. So I had picks set. The point guards knew exactly when to throw me the ball. So because he felt like I was the strongest scorer on the team, he wanted to make sure that I had the ball in my hands the most. We also had some players that were great dribblers, passers, rebounders, and we just made sure that everybody was in those positions to contribute the strengths that they brought to the team, and it just worked. So my job was obviously that year to put the ball in the basket. So there were times I struggled, but for the most part, I could get through it. I could have like 3 quarters horrible, and then I would make like 10 shots in a row, and it would even out. But I was very fortunate because I had the best teammates. I had people that just wanted to win. They weren't selfish. They were, even though when you're a scorer, you get all the attention. They were just incredibly supportive and always passing me the ball the minute I was open. So, it was just one of those seasons where everything clicked, and, I had the plays set up and I had great teammates.
And when you made that transition from 6-on-6 in high school to the 5-on-5 game in college and the pros, how did you translate your offense to become such a prolific scorer in the 5-on-5 game as well?
There was definitely a connection there, because in Iowa high school, we were only allowed 2 dribbles. So you had to create a shot within 1 or 2 dribbles. And so I developed a jump shot. And so I learned to make moves within 1 or 2 dribbles and pop up and shoot a jumper over the defense. And it was pretty much ahead of its time because nobody was prepared for that at that time. And so a mid-range jumper. So I think my high school game really benefited my career when I started playing college and at the pro level, because I had that quick move and jumper where I could elevate and go over the defense and create a shot just about any time, any place. So it definitely was a benefit to have played in Iowa, I think, when I got to the later parts of my career.
And then how did you get the nickname Machine Gun Molly?
Yeah, I never liked that, but the first year we were playing in the East Coast, and a writer from the Washington Post was writing a story and on the game that he saw, and he used it as a description of the way I played, because I guess I scored a bunch of points in a row really quickly. And then it went out on the wire services nationally, and next thing you know, everybody's calling me that. And I went into my front office and said, hey, I don't want that nickname. And they were just saying, we need the promotion and the marketing, and now it's out there, so just roll with it. So I did.
And here we are 45 years later talking about that nickname.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. And then, of course, with some of the marketing promotions we did, when by the time I got to San Francisco, the third season of the WBL, they wanted me to pose with a replica machine gun and all that sort of thing. But I think that differently from today, it was so important just to get people's attention and get them to just come see a game, give us a chance, because the expectations for women athletes there were just, well, if you were a tennis player, if you were a golfer, then you could be elite. But they quite weren't ready to accept women in the team sports. That was kind of like the man's category. And the sports writers had so much power and influence over the fans by what they would write in their opinion columns, or even the way they worded their news articles. So that was part of my job with the promotion, was to do interviews to where we could encourage people to be curious enough to come out and give us a chance and just watch the game. And then we could usually win them over as fans.
And, what was your favorite part of playing the game, either 6-on-6, 5-on-5, or both?
It just has to be the competitive nature of it, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. I was not a good loser, but I'd love to win. So I was willing to do whatever it took as far as working extra time on my shot, shooting free throws, or just working extra, because being on a winning team was really important to me. And I was just very fortunate that I did play with some great players, not only in Iowa, but in San Francisco, played with some top players. So as the league developed, more and more players started to come into the league that were, Wade Trophy winners, like Carol Blazkowski, Nancy Lieberman, Annie Myers, won a national champion. These were national championship winners. So you had to raise your game to that level to compete. And I think I love that challenge so much, because I come from such a humble background in a small Iowa town to now be on the same stage with some of the best female basketball players in the country. And it was so rewarding for me to be able to compete with them almost on an equal basis and prove that I belonged on that court with them.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Molly. And thanks to our listeners for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And make sure to tune in the rest of the week to hear from Howard, Jackie, and the WNBA draft crew.